Okay.
You can change that if you want to.
And how do I do that?
Let's see, speaker view, or if you click on that gallery, usually there's
Oh,
a,
yeah, that's right. The gallery thing. Okay. Okay. We'll work on that. Okay. Paul, if you're ready, why don't we get started then? First,
Okay.
let's everyone introduce themselves real quickly. If you're a member of a club or not, and we'll just start. Susan K., why don't you start?
Yes, I live in Scottsdale and I'm a member of a number of clubs. Palo Verde Republican Women, Women of Fountain Hills, your club down south. I'm a member of like 4 or 5 clubs and I'm going to be joining a couple more. It's all in my profile.
Great, thank you. And Susan is also a co-host. Susan K. is also a co-host for us. Okay, go ahead, John.
Yes, my name is John Castilla, and I'm a precinct committeeman for LD 23. Pretty much retired, and I have enjoyed the club so far.
Okay. Doug, you want to go ahead?
Okay, I'm Doug Cook. I belong to a number of organizations. One of them is the Santa Cruz County Patriots, but the other thing is I'm a member of retired military intelligence. I used to be the president, but I stepped down about a year or so ago. So I'm a member of several religious clubs, like Knights of Columbus.
Okay. And Luann?
I'm Luann Sedgwick. I live in Chandler, Arizona. I'm a precinct committeeman in LD 17. I belong to the Sun Lakes Republican Club and the Chandler Gilbert Club as well.
Okay. Did we get everyone that's online? Okay. Paul, you're on.
Okay, well, I'll introduce myself. Since I had to use my non-camera computer, I'm really much better than I look. And I'm supposedly retired, but then I met Yale, and that all went out the window. So that's why I'm doing this today. Anyway, so the book we were going to review today is the one by Representative Devin Nunes. His book's called Countdown to Socialism. And in it, he has expressed some thoughts and things of this nature. And what we're going to do today is go over the book, but we're also going to go over what we might want to think about as his incentive for writing this book. And so let's go to the next slide, if you would. Okay. His book is called Countdown to Socialism. And I found this quote by Winston Churchill that socialism is a philosophy of failure, the creed of ignorance, and the gospel of envy. Its inherent virtue is the equal sharing of misery. And if you've been following the political scene, and since you're on this call, you probably have been, the Democrats are looking for equality and equity. And I think what they're looking for is exactly what Sir Winston here is telling us to watch out for. So we want to be kind of careful as we go through this book and review it and what our political people are doing to us. You can go with the next slide. Okay, so the first question I came up with after reading the book twice and then going back over it to do this particular program is Representative Nunes' book really about socialism? And I'd like to start the discussion with that. If you have thoughts on that, let us know, and you don't have to stand in line, just speak up. Who's up?
I didn't read the book, so I don't know how I can talk about it. I recognize, I consider him one of the people that is fighting for us. So whatever he says, I take to heart. But I haven't read the book, so I don't know exactly what he says in there. Can you give us a couple examples of why we may not think it's socialism?
Okay. Before I do, does anybody else have any thoughts on that? Susan K., you look like you're just.
Well, okay, I read the whole book once, but on page 9, it talks about how the radicals sought to eliminate the 4 olds, and that's the old customs, the old cultures, the old habits, and the old ideas. And I just found this book to be a real nice map as to what they're trying to do to us. And I enjoyed it very much. There's a number of things I've got marked here, but I did mark page 9 about these, getting rid of all these olds, our customs, our culture, our habits, and our ideas.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, well, the reason I put this question as number 1 is because if you did read the book, there's not a lot of what I would call actual discussion about socialism in the book. As we go through the book, it sounds more like, to me, Representative Nunes is trying to explain what happened after President Trump was elected and all the attacks on him. And if you remember, and my memory is a little bit hazy on this, but I think I remember it well enough to talk about it. At one point, Senator Nunes, Representative Nunes, went to the White House and spoke to President Trump. And when he came back out, there was a big brouhaha about spilling secrets or something like that. And he actually had to step down from his position on the Intelligence Committee for a while because the Democrats were trying, well, they wanted to remove him from the committee, and he stepped down so that they couldn't do that, I guess, or at least would have had a more difficult time when he's not present there. But if you read about it, it really talks about the attacks on the president, the attacks on the administration, granted by the socialist, who we know is represented by the Democrat Party today. And it looked to me like his whole book was on, I don't know, I won't call it exactly CYA, but it looked like he was explaining what happened to the administration and to him during that period between the election in 2016 and the election of 2020. So that's why I brought this question up, because I didn't find it to be a hardcore discussion of socialism proper. It was just a discussion about what happened in the White House and in the Congress at that time, and that it was being done by the socialists. So that's why I asked this question. If you read the book and maybe you got a little bit different opinion than that, but that's how I saw it.
Okay, I agree with you completely. I read the book, and now that you bring this up, that's exactly what the book was. CYA.
Yeah, that's what I don't want to knock Representative Nunes. He's
I
kind of
agree. Yeah,
sorry.
I agree with you. Yeah.
He's one of the good guys, and
Yeah.
I didn't want to knock him specifically, but it does look like a more of an explanation of what happened to him and by him, and a real discussion of socialism. That's the only reason I brought this question up, is because I wanted to make sure that we discuss the book, at least in my mind, from the standpoint of why it was written and how it was written. So go on, if you would, Yale, to number 2. Okay, and that's what we've been discussing, I think, to a certain point, is that he really is telling his side of the story of what went on in that turbulent time when the socialists were trying to get Trump out of office, and God knows they tried every trick in the book, and some that hadn't even been written about yet. So,
Oh, Doug has his hand up, Paul. I don't know if you can see
I
that.
can't see that. I've only got 4 pictures on my screen. Doug, go ahead.
Okay, 1 and 2 are both give me the same thought. My biggest problem with all this is terminology. People are throwing words at us. Let's get away from terminology and go to concepts. We have a movement to take over the whole world and have one small group of people rule the whole world. And we may have some subsets of that. Socialism is just a term, an economic term, but we're talking about total control of the entire world. And whether they're a socialist, communist, Marxist, Islamic, because Islam is also after the same goal. They want one small group of people ruling the entire population of the world. And so it doesn't matter what you call it, it's the same thing. It's a globalism movement to take over the world. And the biggest problem they have, and they can succeed easily, except we have this 75 million Americans that say, hell no. And they have to remove that 75 million people. And until Trump came along, we didn't have anyone fighting for us. We had our small, what's that group they call themselves, Jordan and Nunes.
Conservative caucus.
Yeah, we have them, but they're just a small minority. They were not in control of DC. Trump was the first one to come along and give us that, that George Washington leadership. Until Trump came along, we had 75 million of us that were patriots, but we didn't have something to form us up into one large army to repel the invasion force. And the invasion force went unimpeded for decades. And now here we are, we're on the precipice of this globalist movement of winning the war they were after. And of course, they have to remove our leader. I'm sure there were plenty of attempts to kill George Washington back when. And so the socialism is, I'm okay with the term, but let's not get overly obsessed with that term. It's basic world globalism, one small group ruling the whole world.
Okay, I think that that's a good summation. The reason we use socialist is because that's the kind of the distinction, if you will, between those of us who are conservative and want to live by the Constitution and accept the Constitution as written, and those who find it to be a living document, as they say, that is subject to social pressures. And so I think that's one of the differentiations that we use in this discussion. But that's a good point. We are fighting globalism and the attempt by an incredibly small but incredibly rich set of people who want to take over the world and become our rulers. Frankly, they don't want to lead. They just want to wish and make it happen. So that's a good point there, Doug. So continuing on with that thought, though, I think one of the things that I've read some time ago was the difference between socialism and communism is socialism is done at the voting booth and communism is done at the point of a gun. And we haven't reached that point yet. But with 75 million of us and 110 million gun owners and 300 million guns, I don't know that the communists and the socialists have the courage to do this. Now, I do know that they won't be doing it. The elites will not be the ones packing iron and headed into the streets to separate us from our guns or our government. But they will have a certain amount of control. And one of the controls that they're going to use is what they've used in Venezuela, I think, and that's food. Food is an incredible weapon. We're having some issues right now set off by COVID that are interfering with our food delivery systems. Our truck drivers right now are very difficult to find. They're starting to add incentives. I saw a $20,000 signing bonus for truck drivers with a valid commercial driver's license and things like this. So our food supply chain is being slowed down. And as you may be remembering, the kulaks, they called them, who were the independent farmers in the Ukraine after Stalin took over, were so independent that they weren't paying close attention to what Stalin wanted said. So he sent his military in to collect all the wheat and move it to other parts of Russia and starved the Ukrainians to death. So food is an incredibly potent weapon, and we may be seeing it used against us in the not too distant future. So you want to be aware of that. And as Yale and some of you know, I'm a prepper, and so I've got stuff, and I would recommend that everybody get stuff that you can eat and drink, especially drink down here in the Arizona area. So okay, that's enough of that preaching. Let's move on.
Can I give you a quick definition for socialism and communism that I came up with? Socialism is the sales pitch. Communism is the enforcement.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. All right. Now the next question that then came to mind as I was going through the book was, does Representative Nunes believe our intelligence agencies are politically neutral? Anybody had any thoughts on that?
During the Cold War, we were focused on Russia and communism, but of course I retired in 1992. And so I would say that they're probably all corrupt by now, but that was, that's in 30 years, they've corrupted all our major agencies. Those agencies were set there to protect us from dictatorships, but when they got corrupted, they may be working against us. But in my day, when I have 20 years in NSA and Navy Security Group, and back in those days, we were true blue. But in 30 years, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if that's been turned upside down.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to believe what Brennan and
Yeah.
Crapper, I call him Crapper, but I mean, the man sat there on national television and lied under oath to Congress that they were not collecting intelligence data from United States citizens.
Right.
And still not in jail, which leads me to believe that there's some hanky-panky, if you will, going on there. So if you did read the book, you'll find that Representative Nunes does believe that our intelligence agencies, at least at the very top, have become politicized and are supporting the Democrats, but the Democrats are being supported by as Doug brought out, our globalist friends. So we do have that to contend with. So we're not only fighting external enemies, we're now fighting internal enemies. And the Constitution was very cleverly written to, when you swore the oath, it was to protect the Constitution from enemies foreign and domestic. And I think that's unfortunately where we are now. And okay, so let's go on to question number 4, if you would, Theo. All right, he does cover a lot of this in his book. Does anybody have any thoughts on that? Surely somebody has a thought.
I've already said too much.
Okay, he talked about the funnel.
Yeah, disinformation funnel,
Yeah, there's a whole chapter on it
right?
right there.
Yeah. All right, so what does he say about it, Susan Kay?
Well, it's just a disinformation funnel, and it starts with schools, and it just goes on and on. It's a huge chapter.
Okay. Anybody else who read the book have any thoughts on that? All right, if you didn't read the book, do you have any thoughts on that? Let's go to what we got here.
Well, I read the book.
Uh-huh.
I have mine on my iPad, which I think I would have been better off buying a hard copy. But anyways, and it does talk about not only in the disinformation funnel, it talks about all the social media, but it talks about the colleges. And I've seen that happen with my own kids, and it's very disheartening. And it's a real problem. It's just we were worried. Our one daughter, who's in the Air Force, who went to the academy, and then they sent her to Harvard, and she came back out, and I was just like, "Who are you?" So after 4 years at the Air Force Academy, and then to go into 2 years at Harvard, she's got some different thoughts. And we have one at ASU right now who's just being pumped full of stuff, and it's just very disheartening.
Yeah. And we're paying for it.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Well, I think there's,
Where are we?
Go ahead, John.
John?
well, after reading the book, I think that some of this is changing. CNN's viewership is way down. I think that some of the more moderate Democrats are starting to wake up and see what's going on, especially with the first 100 days of Biden and his inflation and what's happening in the Middle East, what's happening with fuel prices. I do agree that there is this funnel. I'm wondering, however, though, is it starting to lose its effect over the longer term here? Because, as I said, I think some people are starting to wake up.
Okay, it's my opinion that it's not losing its effect, but now the 75 million people are starting to come out and you're starting to hear this voice.
Well,
That's just my personal opinion.
yeah, I've just read stuff that, you know, there are these moderate Democrats that have said that they kind of regret their vote for Biden.
Sure, yeah.
And that's why I'm saying I think that some of this may be changing. I'm not going to bet on it, but it's not as bad as it was 6 months ago, where people were not waking up. I think the election of Biden and what he did in the first 100 days has shocked a lot of people that were moderate Democrats.
I think there's a lot to be said on that, John. That's a buyer's remorse. Okay, one of the things that we talked about was the education, and I was interested. I think it was Nunes there who said that her daughter went to the AFA and then on to Harvard. That made me run into the other room and get my Kindle because I'm in the process of reading a book called Irresistible Revolution by Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Lohmeyer. And I don't know if you're familiar with the story of Colonel Lohmeyer, but he wrote this book in his off-duty time. He didn't using taxpayer time to do this, and he put this book out. And I can't wait to finish it. But it is a very educational book. His concern is the president and the Secretary of Defense issue with terrorism in the ranks, extremists in the ranks. And he's concerned because we know that under the Obama administration, many of our conservative flag officers were removed from their positions, and the ranks were filled with sycophants. So we've got that problem in our senior military. We barely have that many conservatives there anyway. And we did get a letter signed by, I think it was 124, 134 flag officers, advising the president that his plans for the military were a bad idea. But they were all retired. They were all people who were no longer in a position to actually affect the operations in the military. And of course, unfortunately, well, fortunately, I don't know, our military is run by civilians who don't take their oath very seriously. So what we want to do next is, what I was going to say is to Luann, is that your daughter comes out of the Air Force Academy and goes to Harvard. And the scary thing is, under today's leadership and guidance from the White House, that may not be as harsh a change in their educational philosophy as it used to be. We used to have people coming out of the academies who loved America, believed America was the greatest country in the world, and immediately had written the check that we talk about with veterans. That and then, of course, what we're doing today is honoring those veterans who paid the full price. So we want to be aware that, in my mind, what we've done is we've let the NEA and people like that run our schools and our higher education, and they tend to be left-leaning. So our students are getting this boatload of propaganda And that's one of the things that Representative Nunes talks about is how the news articles have become propaganda now. He refers, I think it was him. I've seen so many things like this lately, but he refers to the New York Times as Pravda, which was the truth. Pravda is Russian for truth, and that was what the Soviet Union used as its organ for supporting the Socialist Party, the communists. So we've got the New York Times.
I used to read it as a Russian intelligence agent. I read Pravda.
And I bet it didn't ever say anything like like Khrushchev is uglier.
Well, my funny story is, you probably don't want to hear it, but in '74, I was reading an article, and the Russian government was trying to convince the Russian people that communism was serving them well, and that those poor Americans across the ocean were starving to death. And then word got out, no, we weren't starving to death. We were eating better than them. So then they tried to switch the narrative to, well, they may be gaining more weight than us, but they're getting lazy because life is so easy on them that they're not building that strength of character. And I don't know if you want me to finish the story, it'd take a minute or so, but it just shows you what a good liar they were. I used to feel so bad for the Russians because the lies were just so incredible, but they're mind blowing because they were good lies. They were lies they could defend, and you knew they were lying, but they could defend it. And that's what we're seeing in this country now, is the Pravda style lies. What happened was they were trying to say America was weak because of our capitalism. So they invited the U.S. Olympic team to Moscow to be in a two-country competition. The next day after the U.S. left, the headline read, "Our glorious Russian team came in second in an Olympic competition, and those decadent Americans came in next to last." And I just had to laugh. Oh my God, what a lie. Because how could you argue that? We did come in next to last, but they were very clever, not to mention that it was only two countries competing. You see how clever that was?
Yeah.
So it was very clever.
There was a story that Khrushchev came to the United States for a visit and then went back to Russia and said that things were so bad in the United States that 1 out of every 3 cars was being pushed by a boat. So anyway, something to consider. Okay, why don't we move on to the next question there, Yale? Okay, well, we talked about the deception funnel, so I guess we can, I don't know if we want to continue on with that, but how is it being used against our constitutional republic? And I think we've talked about the fact that it's being used to influence our youth and many of our adults who only get one. And that's one of the things that he talks about, is that there are so many left-leaning news agencies in the United States now, all of the alphabet networks, that most people can't get the truth. They can only get the one side of the equation, if you will, because that's what's being put out by all these people. I think he refers to a guy named McClatchy, who was personally against Nunes in California, but he had about 20 or 30 papers. He was losing money hand over fist by losing subscribers to his papers because he was so far left. But evidently he didn't mind paying that price. And he may have just been being reimbursed by Soros and people like that to keep that deception going. So that's what we're looking at there. Okay, any other thoughts on the deception funnel? The lively group. Yes, must love my voice.
I don't want to overdo it. I'm talking too much. That's why I'm trying to be quiet.
But you've got interesting things to say, Doug. You've been in the furnace, and so many of us haven't. I spent 14 months in Vietnam flying helicopters, and so I got scars to prove I don't like communism. Not at all. So.
Well, deception is, you can tell a complete truth and all your facts are straight, but if you tell them in a certain order and in a certain way, you can reverse the meanings. It's kind of like when Bill Clinton said, it depends on your definition of is. If you can play with the definition of is, what words can you not play games with? And it's like coming in next to last. That was such a good lie. and you've seen it all over the place. They're telling you perfectly good information, but they're telling it in such a way that you get the exact opposite meaning of what really happened. There is objective reality, and they're twisting objective reality, but they're so good at it that it actually sounds real when you're actually getting the exact opposite opinion.
Okay. Let's move on then to number 6, Yale, if you would. Okay, he discusses in his book the what am I trying to say? Social media. Now the social media seems to be trying to play it both ways. And what does he think of Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act? Does anybody remember how he spoke to that? Okay, I will try to fill in.
Well, I think he basically said it was a problem, that it's given them free reign of what they publish and what they don't publish. And that needs to be stopped.
That's correct. The way he describes it is they have the option. The social media giants, tech people, have the option of deciding what they're saying is either something they're publishing or something they're just allowing to be published. And under one part of Section 230, they have total immunity for what they do and don't do. And as long as they operate under that part of Section 230, they can't be prosecuted or even, I guess that may be the word, prosecuted by shutting down the conservative side of their constituency as it goes on. Did you have a thought there, Susan Kay? Oh, you're muted. Unmute.
Thinking about what you're saying and what Doug was saying, I just found that I took this real personal in this book, this water problem in California, and how they've tried to discredit him around the state and everything in the media and the newspapers. And I just thought that whole section on water was just really good.
It was good, and then of course that flows with the idea that the liberals who put the well-being of the Delta smelt ahead of the
Right.
lives of American citizens,
Right.
the prosperity of the state of California, and they got away with it because of the legislation and legislature of California. So they're pumping millions of gallons of fresh water out into the ocean.
Right.
This little 3-inch thing that's really, you can't even eat them. I mean, that's how bad it is. If they were catfish, I'm from Louisiana, I would say let's save them, but I'm not sure we need to save the Delta smelt to cut 2/3 of our food process out of the system.
And the major problem here is, again, your definition of words.
Right.
Who decides what's decent and what isn't? I mean, if you're an atheist and you quote, and some Christian quotes the Bible, that's indecent to them. It's kind of like on the Second Amendment issues, the red flag that they wanted to pass. That, okay, I'm for keeping guns out of the hands of nutcases, but who decides who is a nutcase and who isn't, or who's a danger with weapons or not? That red flag, whoever defines red flag defines who gets a gun, who doesn't. And the Constitution was very careful about that you don't let any one group of power brokers come in, redefine things, and then just start doing whatever they want. So that's why I'm against red flag, on the basis that they could change the definition of red flag to anyone who voted for Trump, and then they have a legal grounds to come in, kick your door in, and take your guns away from you. Now, if they properly used red flag, that'd be fine, because I don't want some nutcase who wants to commit suicide go out and kill 10 people and then kill himself. That person should have never had a gun. But we can't trust government to be honest with the red flag, the definition of decency.
That's correct. We're putting a lot of power into your ex-girlfriend's or your ex-wife's hands under these red flag laws. You could be the victim of lot of recrimination or payback, if you will, that could be a big problem for you. So the red flag laws are just another niche in the armor of the Second Amendment. As far as I'm concerned, there cannot be a federal law relative to firearms, because no law doesn't infringe on something. And if we have a constitution that says the people cannot, the right to keep and bear arms cannot be infringed, then you can't write a law unless that law says the right of the people to keep arms can't be infringed. That's the only way you could write a law that doesn't infringe on the people's right to control or to maintain their firearms. Okay, well, let's go then to the next slide, if you would. Yeah. Okay, he says in his book towards the end that the purpose of this book is to put information in your hands directly. And so my question is, did he accomplish that? Did the information that you got by reading the book give you a better picture of our countdown to socialism?
Yes, I agree. Yes, it did.
I guess for myself, I found it repetitious because I guess I spend quite a bit of time looking at other podcasts and other sources of information. Again, I found it a tiny bit out of date as well. But I thought it was a pretty good book overall. But for myself, it seemed a little bit repetitious.
Okay. Any other thoughts by anybody?
I tend to agree with what John said. I mean, it was okay, but if you're engaged in what's going on, you're aware of this. I guess what just blows me away personally is that the more I learn, the more I realize just how evil these people are, and that they don't care about anybody or anything. All they care about is power and themselves, and they will stop at nothing to get it.
I think that's very true. I think that over the last year, I've come to the conclusion that the elite Republicans have betrayed us. I think that's pretty obvious, and I think we need a grassroots effort. If one's reading Epoch Times and listening to Steve Bannon and on the War Room and listening to Glenn Beck and J.T. Harris, you're getting all this information. And if you're looking at Newsmax, it's really come to a head that this is all interconnected, and these different Democrat groups, like Yale has talked about, are all interconnected. They may not be formally interconnected, but they're all talking to one another, and they're all using the same terminology, and they've become quite effective at that. And I think this all comes out of Socialism and his industrial area foundations that he put together in the 70s, and which still exists today. In fact, there's a group in Phoenix here that's called the YAF, and it is one of his remnants from that time. And there's plenty of those groups around the country. If you Google Industrial Area Foundation, and these are all the groups that Socialism founded and are still very active.
Okay.
I'd
Anybody else?
like to make a comment. For me, when I finished, I put this book down, and all I could think about was the power, the unbelievable power that Barack Obama had over controlling the media and creating this continuing this disinformation funnel. It's just mind-boggling his power.
It's true. He had a lot of power, but it wasn't really his. It came down from above. I don't think he's that bright. You ever seen him when the teleprompter goes out?
Well, okay, I'm sure that's all true, but anyway, yeah.
Okay. And one of the things that John brought up is interesting, and I think we want to. I'm gonna make these two suggestions to you. The first one is, as I described to you a minute ago, the Irresistible Revolution by Colonel Lohmeyer. I haven't finished the book yet, but just what I've read so far leads me to believe it's going to be an incredibly interesting, and as we just discussed, it's going to be more timely because the guy just wrote the book. What we're reading today, the Countdown to Socialism, was 2 years old, at least, maybe 3 years old now. So that was a lot of old information. What Colonel Lohmeyer is putting out in his book is pretty much right up to date and contemporary with what's going on in our government and our military, and the mix and the bad news of the mix. So we want to be aware of what our government is doing to our military, because we're already I don't know that we're in the cold part of the war with China, and Russia. I don't think Russia really wants to get into a war, but they're not going to let their Chinese buddies take us on by themselves if it comes down to the hard knock. So what Colonel Lohmeyer has for us is very important. The other one, and this speaks more to the bigger picture, I think, in a sense, who we're fighting. And it's called The Naked Communist by Cleon Skousen. Now, it's an old book, written back in the 60s or 70s, maybe the late 50s. I'd have to look at it again. But he takes communism apart. It's almost like taking a clock apart and rebuilding it. And as he takes it apart and puts it back together again, he explains what's going on. And I think it was Susan Kay said that the power that Obama had and this sort of thing. The communist mind is an incredibly different animal than the conservative democratic mind. Their program is based on man. It has no higher calling than man himself, and as a result, they have no mercy and no pity. Either you're a human being that supports them and supports them totally, or you are a human being that is of no use to them. And that's why they can starve out entire countries, or start wars, or have the KGB or whatever it is today eliminate people and disappear people. Because in the communist mind, you're only as good as your support of the party and support of the ideal of communism. So I would recommend these two books, The Naked Communist and Irresistible Revolution, for your study and edification. That's pretty much what I've got for us today.
Okay. I think that this has been a great conversation in terms of where we stand. A lot of good points, and this has been recorded, so we'll have other folks who are not able to see it. Hopefully they'll watch it. But a couple of points. One of the questions I have is, and if each of you could and we have a few minutes left, and thank you, Paul, first of all, for a great guide to this. I think you gave us a good start and a foundation to how we want to do the book club. Remember, this is the first book club. A lot of us think that somehow the network has been around now for 6 months or something. As Susan Kay and I know, and a few of you know, and Paul knows, we just kicked it off on April 26th. So we're in the really baby stages. And while I recognize, and I think, Doug, I was reading one of your comments about we don't have a lot of time, and I agree with you, but I think you would also say, just because we feel that way doesn't mean other people are going to do anything. And that's the thing. So I want to know along that lines, and just a word or a phrase, or maybe no more than 30 seconds. I'd like to know why you're on the line. In other words, why are you here? And why did you decide to take your time to come to this thing in the middle of a Monday or beginning of a Monday? And really, if you could for a moment, not just give us the usual answer, which is, this is important, and that sort of thing, because it's got to be more than that, because I believe this is important to everybody. The 450 some odd folks right now, getting close to 500, believe this is important. The question is, you're here and they're not, and I don't want to focus in on why they're not here. I want to know why you're here. So, Doug, if you can just give us a 30-second Reader's Digest view as to, why you're on the line.
A great philosopher, Chinese, what was it, Confucius or whoever, said 1,000-mile trip begins with one step. You guys are a step that maybe the only way we're going to survive this revolution that's going on in this country. So you guys are my first step. I hate to think what this could turn into eventually, but you guys are trying to come up with answers other than taking out a gun and going into a full civil war. The thought of American killing American absolutely breaks my heart. So you guys are giving me a chance to do something besides take out my my rifle and become a warrior, that kind of warrior. I want to be a peace warrior first.
Okay, the only thing I would suggest is it's us guys.
That's okay. Oh, did I say we? Did I say
Well, you
we?
said you.
Oh,
And I want to make,
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure if
Okay.
that was an error or what, but the most important point, and I really appreciate what you said, because what you said is powerful. It's us. It's
okay.
we. Okay, Susan K.
I'm here because when Trump lost the election, I did not leave my house and all of my friends, my heart was, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. I didn't think I was going to make it through that. I mean, I really thought I was going to have a heart attack and die, and I live alone, and who's going to find me, right? And I needed a purpose. I have to have a purpose, and I read your words on the briefs, and that's why I'm here. This is a purpose. This is a journey for me. I'm making unbelievable, wonderful new friends all over the county, and I will do that across the state and across the country. And I'm a worker bee. I'm a yeoman, and I'm here with a purpose to help.
Okay. Luann.
I'm here to learn. I want to figure out, I need to better understand everything that's going on so that I can try to come up with a way to explain it to my more liberal leaning friends and try to get them to see what's really happening out there.
Okay. John?
I'm interested in finding new ideas of how to connect with people. I was reading the website today, and someone suggested the creation of business cards that could be passed out with our information, not necessarily anyone's name, but just the contact information for the network and what the network was about. And I thought that was a very good idea. Hopefully somebody has the skills to create a business card, and then I can go print it off at one of the print shops. But yeah, I think it's very important that we somehow communicate with other groups, just like the Democrats have done. I think that's amazingly important. They are organized but decentralized, and I think that's what makes them very effective, because they can fight on several fronts at the same time.
I know Susan Kay's been doing that with the brochure,
Right.
going every place and everywhere. And I know that's been very effective. I saw that as well, that comment. And that's something that, it's it comes down to, in a sense, as we've said, this is all of our responsibility, and there are no gatekeepers here. We're all going to do great things, and we're all going to stumble. So you have ideas and things like that, whomever it is, just start following up on it. This belongs to everybody. But I saw that. Paul, your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts, as you know, Yale and I have been working together for about, I don't know, 10 years now. Started off, it says, with the Convention of States, and then with the fair tax. And then we got involved with the URGVS, the United Republicans of Green Valley and Sahuarita. And then he developed this into the RPN. And I'm here because I am a true believer that we need a strong leader who can put us together. We as Republicans are rugged individualists, and this is probably our greatest strength and our greatest weakness. I find that getting Republicans to unify and form hard, cohesive groups is like herding cats. It's very difficult to get people to do anything that's not their idea. And Yale has the ability to bring everybody on board with his training on the other side. But anyway, I'm here because I really believe that we've got to do something. And as Doug says, better to light the peace pipe than to use the hatchet end of it to solve our issues with our neighbors. So that's why I'm here.
Yale, can I say something?
Please, go ahead.
Okay. You know, we all have a different purpose. My specific purpose, okay, I'm a duplicate bridge player, so I walk in a liberal world. 95% of the people that I play bridge with, against, tournaments around the country, wherever, they're liberals. I don't have time for this anymore. I'm not going back to face-to-face bridge. Okay, my purpose, I want to find and help these 75 million people that voted for Trump. That's my personal goal. I would like to find these people and bring them forward and give them, I know hope is not a strategy, but bring them forward and give them some kind of thought process that we can do this and we can make some changes.
Well, you certainly have helped so far.
Well, anyway, John, did you get that flyer that I sent to you in the chat?
Yes, I did. And
Okay.
I'll start using it. I didn't use it this Friday because of the holiday weekend,
Sure.
but hopefully next week I'll feel up to going to the meeting. I'm status post cancer and I'm still recovering from it.
Sorry.
So my energy at sometimes just
Sure.
bottoms out.
Sure.
So yes, but I did receive it. Thank you very much. I will get it printed over at Staples or someplace like that and take it to the next meeting I attend.
Can I make a suggestion? In your
Sure.
profile, you have your home as Los Angeles, California.
Oh, I wonder how that happened.
Well, it's just an accident. Okay. If you could
Okay.
change that to Scottsdale, Arizona, that will benefit everything you're doing because people need to know our cities and states. And my first thought was that you thought that statement meant where were you born? So I thought, well, maybe you were born in Los Angeles, California. But if you could change that, then people can find you.
Sure, that would be fine. I had never gone to the profile, so I don't know how that got entered like that, but I will definitely try and do that over the next day or two.
Okay, all right.
That's great.
Thank you
Yes.
very much.
Yeah, sometimes the computer, or rather the network itself, not ours, but the platform that we're on, where your computer is, where it's been, things like that. It's weird how things happen, but you got to go in and configure it. Okay, some concluding comments from what I heard, and this has been, every time I'm involved with folks on this network, I learn so much because it's so much common sense. And I've read Kathleen, my wife, of course, she read the book Nunes. I was a big fan to his, and when it first came out, And like the rest of us, I mean, he's a good guy. He's a great guy. But here's the thing, and it makes it interesting, and all of you brought this home. The Republican Party loves to describe how bad things are. I mean, we are great at it, and our leaders are great at it. In so many ways, we just describe everything, how bad it is. And the thing is, we've got the education. We can configure it in a million different ways. We know things are not good. The question is, what do we do about it? So that led me then to the idea of the posting that's going on right now on the network. And one of the things we have to be careful is we don't become another Facebook where people just post things and we start competing with each other. Oh, you think they did this is bad? Let me post this. And we go back and forth where, oh, I'm going to show you how bad things really are. What we really need on here more than anything is ideas on what to do about what's going on. That's the ingenious and the great possibilities of this network. Not so much what the idiot Democrat did, but rather what are we going to do about it? And it doesn't even have to be things you're committed to. It's just ideas. And you can say those things. I'm not talking to you. I'm thinking we're going to send this out to information on how to start putting information out on the network is, you know, you can, maybe we'll have little codes or something that says, I don't know if I even agree with this, but here's an idea. So people have the freedom to start expressing themselves about what we ought to do, what actions we ought to take. That's the first thing. The move from describing, we've got to stop being just descriptors about what's going on, but moving into actors. The second thing that I heard that I thought was kind of interesting, and it focuses on the narrative. And Doug was talking about that a little bit in a sense, and everyone else, about how the Russians and the Communist Act and Pravda and all that. And if you think about it, go back to the hearing that took place when the Ukraine thing was coming up on the phone call with the president. Remember that? Donald Trump. And what's his face on the other side? Oh, I forgot his name now. He actually made up a telephone conversation. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And he just went on, and the president said this, and the Ukrainians said this, and this, and this, and it was all made up. But of course, it was designed to make the president look like he broke the law and everything else. And then you watch the media repeat it as if it was true. And I mean, okay, so here, what's my point? The Republican leadership did nothing. Now, yeah, they said, you went on the talk shows and said, but why wouldn't you be outraged? I mean, that's the thing. And it gets back to the Alinsky thinking that John was talking about. And we've got to start doing that. And Luann, you made the point about how bad these folks are. The other side wants to eliminate us. It's not get along. And so we've got to get our Republican leaders to start responding that way, but that's not going to happen unless we do. And that's really what the purpose of the network is. So 3 things that I'll leave you with that I learned from you. One, we've got to start posting on the network ideas that we're going to do, you know, and it starts just with us. Let's not worry about anyone that's not on the Zoom call right now. You know, the right people show up. And when we start giving examples, others will follow. I guarantee that. That's the way it works. Because they'll start competing with you on different ideas of what to do. That's the thing. So that's the first thing. The second is we have got to start describing the other side as they truly are. And when we see something, we need to get that word out. And one of the things I'm thinking about now is setting up a special kind of group, and I'm not sure exactly how we'll do this, but if you remember the old war room that came out in the Clinton campaign, and basically anytime the other side said something, they immediately would come out with a response. We've got to start doing that. So, but that means then we have to almost have journalists, members, responders on our whole network. So if you see something, Doug, that you saw is just outrageous, you immediately go to the network, post it, and let everybody know, listen to this most outrageous, lying, whatever it is, and use the most, going back to John's point on the Alinsky stuff, start using that from our point of view in terms of 100% right positions against 100% wrong. And the final point in terms of where we are is that we've got to start beginning to realize that nothing is going to change in the Republican Party until we do. I mean, that's it. They're not going to change. And there's no reason for them to change. There's no motivation because as we know right now, everybody's talking about 2022. Well, 2022 will be okay. Don't worry about it. Obviously, we're going to win. The history's on our side, midterm election, and then you all said it yourself. Well, the Democrats have overplayed their hand. Everybody now knows Biden's an idiot, buyer's remorse. Of course, we're going to get 2022 back, as if somehow that's going to save us. It comes down to the fact we don't want just 2022. We want our country back. And so we're going to go on the affirmative, or rather the affirmative action in terms of our own approach. We're going to start taking action to move the needle in the direction it has to go. We're no longer interested in status quo. And that's the message that has to get out. Anyway, I want to thank all of you for being on the call. I want to thank Paul for guiding it. Any final last words?
Yes, did a great job. Yep.
Yes. Final last word.
I had one question. I've been searching around the information on industrial area foundations.
Right.
And Saloyansky. I came across a book called Lessons Learned from Arnie Graff. Do you know anything about him? I haven't ordered the book. It's obviously a much older book. But it supposedly talks about some of the things that they actually did. And I was wondering if you had ever come across Arnie Graff many years ago.
Yeah, I know the name and I know, but I can't tell you much more than that. Basically, I think it's a compilation of various activities and actions and strategies that were undertaken.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. That's why I was thinking of getting it. I mean, it only has 19 ratings, and I'm sure it's a very old book.
The one thing that might be good about it, now that you're mentioning it, I'm just guessing at this point, if you did get it, it might give you ideas on what we can do.
Exactly. That's why I've been researching Industrial Area Foundation and finding out what's been published and what hasn't been published. I guess there's a lot of information in the National Archives, but there's no way I can get.
Well, if you got the book and you then started looking at it, it might be something we could use for another book club.
Okay.
You never
Then
know.
I'll pick it up.
Especially if it's hands-on. That's the thing. If it goes to what can we do, that's even better.
Right, exactly.
What can we do?
Exactly.
But
and that's what I've been looking for. So I will go ahead and order it and read it.
Great.
And then get back to you.
Yeah, the Industrial Areas Foundation, you're right, been around. I was heavily involved with it in Northern California many years ago, and it was out of Texas that we were working with. And it was even too weird for the union in a lot of ways.
Right.
They're very elitist. It's amazing how people who want to deal with the the most impoverished people are the most elitist people you'd ever want to meet. It's incredible. They were too elite even for the elite. Anyway, thank you all.
Well, I was just amazed that it's still very active.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah, it's
I
everywhere.
went through that and I clicked on the site as to where they had chapters, and it's all over the United States still.
Yeah, and they have a big chapter in Tucson, and they go under a million different euphemisms.
Right.
And they always are focusing in on the downtrodden. And then they come in, if you go to their workshops and trainings, however, it's very much to destroy everything that we value. Everything that we value. I had a run-in with them, I guess it was several months ago, and it was on the border actually. And we were dealing with, unfortunately, it was MSNBC, and we actually did a thing on the border. And I think if you go to the YouTube, you'll see it. If you click my name with MSNBC, I had an argument with one of their indigenous folks that was from the Industrial Area Foundation. And she basically was saying that the border was the wall. This was when Trump was still president. And the wall was the worst thing in the world. And it was destroying her people and all this, that, and the other. And I had a major argument with her about the fact that everything was, her whole people, if she wanted to talk it that way, were being used by the cartels in terms of drugs, sex exploitation, everything else. But the interesting part is, it's going to come as no surprise that the commentator for the MSNBC, of course, shut me down completely and called me a racist and everything else. But anyway, long and short is, they're here, they're alive, and we've got to deal with them. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Happy Memorial Day.
Happy Memorial Day. Remember
Yes,
why it
yep,
is. Bye-bye. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Paul. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Paul.
Very good.
Yes.